Jack Ma was a high school English teacher, and he builds this company called Alibaba. Massively successful all across China, a true unicorn. So it's almost like a Jeff Bezos type figure who's disappeared from public life for almost a year, and then he reappears lecturing at a kindergarten in rural China. The official press said he had embraced supervision. That's the level of reassertion of control. All the growth that happened in the late 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s really clamped down by Xi, and he has really consolidated control. He is the most powerful Chinese leader since Mao. A year and a half ago at the party conference, he made it possible for him to stay on effectively emperor for life.
Here's the Chinese embassy in the US, right around the time when we were starting to talk about tariffs. If war is what the US wants, be it a tariff war, a trade war, or any other type of war, we're ready to fight to the end. When you've stored 70% of the world's corn, why do you do that? When you've built enormous hospitals in Fujian province across from Taiwan, why do you do that? What began in 2021 with 1 brigade has now reached 42 brigades.
If we get into a conventional conflict with China right now, we will suffer calamitous levels of casualties.
We can't build stuff anymore. Why? Why do we depend on China for things that are very critical to our survival? Pharmaceuticals, antibiotics, penicillin, these are things that we should not outsource.
Telecom, phones.
A scary conversation at breakfast.
If China takes Taiwan, it's going to have massive implications for the U.S. economy. Extreme amounts of inflation, high interest rates, job losses. TSMC, that produces 60% of the world's chips and I guess 90% of the high-end ones, that is either going to go to the Chinese or all the fabs are going to basically get blown up and all the engineers move to the U.S. In either of those two cases, you have to ask yourself, well, gosh, if the semiconductor manufacturing isn't being done by TSMC, what does that mean for NVIDIA? What does that mean for AI, Grok, or ChatGPT?
What does it mean for the chips in your F-250 pickup truck or phones? As important as the Arab oil embargo was to the world market in the 70s, imagine that level of hegemony times 5.
Stuff that you don't think about. Your washing machine has chips in it. Where are you going to get a new washing machine?
If you can get it at all.
The Chinese government has asserted control over every aspect of society. Back when I lived in China, the Communist Party really didn't factor into people's lives in any meaningful way compared to, say, Jack Ma or Tencent or Taobao or a zillion of these companies that were radically transforming the country. And when Xi Jinping took over, he said, hey, wait a second. We're an empire, just like the Qing dynasty and the Ming dynasty before that. We are at risk of losing our empire to these oligarchs. Something's got to change. And he began reasserting control in the same way Mao did over every aspect of the economy. And today you're basically dealing with a techno surveillance state where dissent isn't tolerated. People have to read Xi Jinping thought, and it's kind of strangely done a full circle. Deng Xiaoping opened everything up, and now he's closing things back. You can Google them and you see these islands. They are incredible with runways you can land a 747 on, missile defenses.
Naval bases. Basically, they built full-on military bases all through the South China Sea. And in my travels in China, I met the CEO. I was drinking with him one night, the state-owned enterprise that built those islands. And he admitted, he said, it was never in our grand plan. But we found the Obama administration to be so vapid, so useless, that we just said, go. Now, dozens of bases claiming tens of thousands of square miles of territory now as Chinese, to the detriment of Philippines, Vietnam, Malaysia. Where's the last place Gavin Newsom visited? When you see Trump taking a hard line against the Chinese Communist Party, the Democrat Party of the United States will adopt a much more pro-China policy, and you will see more illicit money flowing to Democratic candidates. If Gavin Newsom is their candidate, you can expect a very pro-China friendly politics. The Chinese political subversion that you see in Japan, in Korea, in Australia, believe me, it's in the United States as well. The 1,000 Talents program, massive intelligence collection, the United Front Workers program, Chinese subversion at the university level and through thousands of American corporations. It's an ancient society. They understand how to shift that fence 6 inches a year.
Here you have little Filipino fishing vessels, and then the Chinese Coast Guard comes in and literally shoots lasers at their eyes or waterboards them or rams them in Philippine territorial water. And I say it's Philippine territorial water because the United Nations proclaimed an edict.
It was a law of the sea trial based on 500 years of admiralty law. Clearly, it was Filipino territory.
China says that because an admiral in the Ming dynasty named Zheng He traveled there, that this is all belongs to China, which is complete nonsense.
So they're not only building these islands just for the militaristic advantage advantage. They're expanding the borders. They're actually playing by the rules.
No.
Who's recognizing these borders then?
So the UN said that the border belongs to the Philippines. China said, oh, no, it doesn't. It belongs to us. We don't care what the UN says. So China lost their case.
But there's no
matters is-
consequences for them, are there?
Correct. And it started with the Obama administration not delivering any consequences because China first said Washington believed the lie. Oh, these are just going to be weather stations or search and rescue locations. Yeah, no, they were full-on military bases. And now they're even pushing into Korean waters. Jack Ma was a high school English teacher, and he builds this company called Alibaba, which becomes the Amazon market, massively successful all across China, a true unicorn. And to give you an idea of Xi clamping down, Jack Ma, so it's almost like a Jeff Bezos type figure who's disappeared from public life for almost a year, and then he reappears lecturing at a kindergarten in rural China. The official press said he had embraced supervision. That's the level of reassertion of control. So all the growth and the openness that happened in the late 70s, 80s, 90s, early 2000s really clamped down by Xi, and he has really consolidated control. He is the most powerful Chinese leader since Mao. And in the latest Chinese Party conference, he made it possible for him to stay on effectively emperor for life.
How does the rest of the world view Taiwan? Do they view it as part of China?
In the 70s, Taiwan was China, and we did the switcheroo, and we gave PRC China the seat that Taiwan used to have in the United Nations.
Nixon did that.
Every country, with the exception of a handful, have switched diplomatic recognition from Taiwan to mainland China. And this is a function of the fact that China's economy is so important that it uses it as a leverage point.
But Nixon also did it back then because Soviet Union and Communist China used to be very, very closely aligned. And then in the 60s, they started having a bit of a falling out and border disputes. And Nixon kind of used that outreach from China because they were afraid of getting run over by the Soviet Union to kind of put a wedge between the USSR and the Chinese Communist Party.